Hey guys, it's me and we are back. Welcome back, VM Nation. Guys, this is going to be a fun episode. If you're looking to up-level your life and your mindset, you're definitely not going to want to miss this episode. But guys, also I want to thank our sponsors. As you know, my sponsors are veterans 100% of the time. I want to thank Kurt Bablish of Bablish Woodworks. If you guys love homemade, handwork, wooden products in your home, like Christmas is right around the corner, so's Valentine's Day. If you want to get something made for your wife, girlfriend, or your daughter, definitely reach out to Bablish Woodworks. And also Tammy Moses of the Hoarding Solution. If you know people that are living in the hoard, a lot of people, don't really realize that how living in a hoarding solution can be when catches on fire. So not only so the person inside of the house can get killed, also the first responders that respond. So if you guys know anybody living in the hoard, please reach out to Tammy Moses. She's changing the world one home at a time. Guys, this is going to be a great episode with a new friend. We just connected, and he's also a Yankees fan, not Mets, Yankees fan. Neil, thank you so much for coming on. I've been looking forward to this so much. Thank you so much, brother.
Thanks, brother. I really appreciate it. We in a pre-roll, I heard there's a big conflict of Mets versus Yankees in your household. So if that's the biggest conflict you guys have, then that's a great relationship.
Well, I just realized that happy spouse, happy house. So I try to keep my wife happy as much as possible. So what's going on? How's your day going?
Good, man. It's that time of the year where we all get introspective, retrospective, do kind of a gut check. And so I've been on the phone a ton this week, having that conversation with a lot of the people that are in my Press4ward community. And then tomorrow morning, me and my girlfriend head off to spend some time with Tony Robbins for the weekend. And then, which we could talk about a little bit during the podcast. Then we go to Date with Destiny, which is one of Tony Robbins' big events. And then I will then come back to New York and facilitate one of my men's retreats where we're going to have plant medicine and all kinds of other stuff that we can talk about during the podcast as well.
Okay. And I love it. And by the way, you're just like, yeah, I'm just going to hang out with Tony Robbins. It's like, Frank from down the street, it's like, yeah, I'm just going to hang out with Tony a little bit. But now talk to us a little bit of, where you're from, where you grew up. Now we both live out on we're both from the East Coast. So we both have that kind of little bit of street cred. So talk to us about where you grew up and what kind of little boy was Neil.
Yeah, I love this question, mostly because the first time I was called disruptive was by my grandmother. I was 8 years old, long before disruptive became a cool word. And I took that word and ran with it my whole entire life. And it served me well. The other thing is that, so mom had me when she was 16, parents divorced by the time I was 5. First time I used drugs, I was 12. It was out of my mom's bedroom drawer. And a whole bunch of other stuff. I liked to fight when I was a kid, really liked the fist fight when I was a kid, really good at it too. And along that way, my grandparents became these like anchors in my life. And they all told me, anchored into me, Neil, you could do anything that you put your mind to. They never told me I had to play by the rules. They never told me that I needed to go to college. They never told me any of those principles. What they always said was you could put your mind to, and you could accomplish anything you put your mind to. And it's crazy. Me now as a parent to 3 children, you don't realize, none of us can ever realize what we're anchoring into our kids and what things land right and land wrong. But that led me to being 18, wanting to get out of Queens, New York, join the Marine Corps, had a very successful career as a Marine, travel all over the world, did things foreign.
I want to go back. I want to go way
because
I love talking about everybody's recruiting story, because everybody has a different recruiting story. Now I got to give props because I love my Marines. Number one, best uniform ever, hands down. Enough said. Second, I love the mindset. There's no such thing as an ex-Marine. There's, so once a Marine, always a Marine. And I love that mindset. I think if we would all do that and, start having that kind of mindset, that, we'll always be who we want to be. So talk to us about your recruiting story, and why did you choose the Marines over the other branches?
Yeah, I love that question. I was 17 and a half, and I think the Marine recruiter had been at my school, right? The guys come, they stand outside the building, great uniforms. And I was in a really tough place in my life because 17, too smart for my own good, getting into trouble, hanging out with guys that I shouldn't be. And I remember there was like a group, this is me being super honest, the group of kids I was hanging out with, police officers came to my school and pulled them out of class. And it turned out that they had done something that was, like, I thought was really, really bad at the time. And I had this moment where I was like, I got to get out of here. If I keep on staying here, like, this is not going to be good for me. I just had this, I don't know, divine message, if you want to call it that, to be like, I just can't be here. And so I on my 18th birthday, without even telling my mom, went down and took the ASVAB. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, though, that's taking that's the qualifying test to get into the military and decide what jobs you're going to have. And then I'll never forget it, because you'll like this because you asked the question. I remember going back to the recruiting office, and they had, I'm sure they have a different way of doing it now, but I joined the Marines in 1996. And my recruiting office had this TV where they had VHS cassettes where based on your MOS and your ASVAB score, they would put in a different video and show you like this marketing thing of like, I'll never forget it, that there was a younger recruit sitting in the chair, and the recruiter was showing him a video of what it was like to be a 5-ton truck driver. And this video made the job look so cool. Like, he's driving, they're bumping around, they're hauling tanks and artillery everywhere. And I was watching this video, I was like, wow, that's a cool job. And then they got done with him, he left, they sat me in the seat, and they pull out the 5-ton video and put it down. And they're like, all right, let's put in your videos. And I'm like, why? What about that job? And the recruiter goes, your score's a lot better. You don't want that job. And I remember being like, this is crazy. But ultimately became signed up that day on my own at 18 to become a combat engineer. I thought that was a cool thing. I wanted to be in a combat facing role. Went home, sat down at dinner with my mom. My mom says, how was your day? And I said, great. I joined the Marine Corps. I leave in 4 months. And she was like, oh, okay. and that's how it happened.
All right. So now I got a question, because, anybody that knows anything about New York, growing up, Brooklyn, Queens, you're not the average cat. So when you go to basic training, like for me, I had a smart ass mouth, so I got dogged a lot. What was your experience in basic training, especially coming from the East Coast, meeting people from down south and the West Coast?
Right. I mean, this is a great question, and it's something. I grew up in a middle-class family, in New York City. Really, I mean, even though I'm Caucasian or white or whatever you want to call me, I don't care what you call me. I grew up in a family that was openly diverse. We accepted everybody to be the same in our neighborhood, in our schools, in our churches, and all our things. And I'll never forget that when I remember being in boot camp, and you have guys from country boys from Arkansas and West Virginia, and Crips from Detroit and Los Angeles, in sleeping next to each other. And I remember the guy who slept next to me had said he had never seen a black person in his life before. And then I remember when we had to put on our core frames for the first time. I remember a guy that I was in boot camp with saying that was the first time he'd ever worn dress shoes in his life. And it really just was like a really like I was in boot camp pre hazing incident. And so you know, for anybody who knows what that is, that's a whole different story. But hazing was rampant, accepted, okay, part of the culture of the military, and just a thing that you went through. It obviously changed 98, 99, whatever that started to change. Um, but I really thrived and embraced the boot camp experience. I was really committed to. I wanted to get away from New York. I wanted to travel the world, see all the things, do all the things, and that's exactly what I did.
So how many years did you put in?
So I made it through my first enlistment, and then re-enlisted for a second term, and then got out shortly after the whole Afghanistan thing had gone on for a couple of years.
Now, did you, obviously you were deployed?
Yeah, so stationed in Okinawa, Japan for a year, spent some time in different various Asian countries, did a bunch of time on 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit. So we were living on a carrier class, warship. So did all of Mediterranean and stuff like that. And then did a whole bunch of other time in the Middle East and stuff like that as well.
All right. So this show, we never go into any details. I mean, mainly because that's not what we do. But also, I respect people with OPSEC and stuff like that. But, so how many years total did you do?
It's like 6.5, 7, something like that.
Okay. So now, when you decided to get out, or you got out, first of all, was everything okay up here? Because I know a lot of guys, girls, when they get out, they notice something's a little off when they got out. And then my next question is, when I got out, so I didn't get out because the way I got out, and I did, the day medically discharged me was the day that I attempted, because I lost my career, I lost my camaraderie, and like we talked earlier, I didn't know who Richard was. Sergeant Kaufman, that's who I was. And when that was taken away from me, I didn't know who I was. And my transitioning was very hard. What was your transitioning story?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I had been in the Marines, and I had actively decided that I was going to make a career of it. And when I re-enlisted. So I was combat in Second Marine Division for a big piece of my first enlistment. Loved it, thrived in it, but also wanted to like grow, in the Marine Corps. And so I did a lateral move into a job that then led me into the air wing of the Marine Corps, which I very much didn't fit in with the culture. And as I picked up rank, I started to look at, I was a sergeant at the time, and I started to look at staff sergeants and gunnery sergeants who I felt at the time, I recognized that some of these Marines were institutionalized. And I found that piece of military service to be scary. There was Marines that I was serving with, who I was reporting to, who were not in it because of purpose or mission, and maybe they were, but to me it felt like they were institutionalized. They were more afraid to get out than they were to serve the mission, and that to me was scary. And that was one of the core reasons of me kind of getting out. Now, I literally just left out of the Marine Corps when I had an opportunity to, and went through probably 3 or 4 years of identity challenges. And a big piece of my work today in the business, one of the businesses that I run, and the research I've done around that is facilitated around this one commonality. Um, Simon Sinek and a bunch of other people love to talk about purpose, but there's a huge uh, alignment between military veterans, Olympians, and professional athletes, and childhood movie stars. In that you pick out these people who come from all walks of life, they find this grandiose, amazing purpose that they feel like they have a purpose and mission against. And if our military does anything better than anyone else on the world, it is that we grind into people. We indoctrinate people into this having purpose much greater than themselves. And when we then stop doing it, that purpose in a moment goes away.
Yep. And now, that's something, that our mutual friend, Sergeant Nick always said, once you step off base, the military does not give a shit about you. Your phone stops ringing. You're pretty much out on your own. And unfortunately, when a lot of us get out of the military, we want to start a company. So we're going to start a t-shirt company, hat company, liquor, coffee company. But they don't, like we're in the military, we know how to write an SOP. We know how to follow an SOP. But I think a lot of times when we get out and start a business, a lot of us just fly by the seat of our pants. And then like 6 months later, we're $10,000 in debt and don't know what the hell just happened. So talk to us about your early indoctrination into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I love that. So I'll tell you this. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, shuffled around like a lot of us do for a couple months, and I got a job as a security guard at 135 East 57th Street in New York City. Now, the reason why I say this address all the time when I do podcasts is because this is the building that they moved all of the 9/11 survivors into.
Yep.
So every company that people got out of, from Cantor Fitzgerald, Galleon Group, a whole bunch of these, they had a whole building full of civilians who had gotten PTSD.
Yeah.
So a very high security building. I ran security for that building for about 6 months. And I just had this thing inside of me. I was like, I can't do this. I should have stayed in the Marines if I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a shitty resume and I went floor by floor. And I handed the resume to every single HR person in the building. And one of them said yes. And it happened to be Guggenheim Partners, which is one of the largest, most respected hedge funds on the planet.
Yep.
$5 billion under investment. We had the Kentucky Derby trophy on the executive boardroom table, and one of my jobs was to polish it, and water the orchids and work in the mailroom and stuff like that. And one of the CTOs that was there, one of the chief technology officers, pulled me aside and said, "Why are you in the mailroom? You're so much smarter than this." So this is the job I got. I just got out of the Marines. I wanted to do something. This is where they put me. And so he immediately took me and started putting me on trading desks and started teaching me about data and algorithms and all this stuff. I'm sitting around with a bunch of guys who have degrees from Wharton and Columbia, and they're making millions of dollars. I'm making $43,000 a year, but I'm sitting there taking in all this stuff. And to shorten the story, I started to recognize my worth in that moment. It took me a long time to start to recognize that. But I would go on this little corporate journey, work at really, really great companies, Cushman and Wakefield, to NBC. I ended up at Morgan Stanley, got laid off from Morgan Stanley, had like a little bit of a breakdown there, really started to realize I needed to work on the identity thing. I had put the identity thing aside, which I think is a lot of what military guys do. They go, okay, I got to get a job. I got to get money. I got to take care of my family. I got to find a purpose. And we put all this shit in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
And then sooner or later, it's all going to come down around you. And that's what happened for me.
Yeah.
And rebuilt myself, started to work in startups, in technology startups. And suddenly started shifting into sales and marketing a lot. Did some interesting things. And I know this is a little bit long-winded, but it's worth it. I started working in a startup, and the company started to run out of money. And the CEO of the company sent me an email, and he basically said, you're going to start grinding your sales team to perform more, or we're going to fire you and fire them. And I responded. I had had a couple of drinks that night. I was out networking, and I responded back to that email, and I said, I said hashtag I resign. That was on a Thursday night in November, about 7 years ago, 8 years ago now, maybe. And that weekend, I had probably one paycheck in the mail or in the bank, no savings, no nothing. I wrote a business plan on a PowerPoint deck of this digital marketing service idea that I had been doing in that business. And I put together these 5 PowerPoint slides. I sent it out to about 10 people I knew. And I said, look, I'm starting my own company. If anybody has anybody that this idea would land well with, I'd love to meet with them this week. And on that Sunday night, 3 people came back with 3 meetings. Tuesday morning, I walked into the first meeting, grabbed a marker, drew out my version of this business, this product that we're going to do for digital marketing. The CEO of the company sits down, looks at me and goes, that's a really, really great idea. The idea was, we will take your existing pipeline of customers and the prospects you have. We're then going to go buy different forms of data, put it with this data, and we're going to be able to find how to close your deals faster, better, quicker, because we're bringing in data that you don't have. That was the concept. The CEO looks at me and he goes, Neil, that sounds phenomenal. If you can do that, that's amazing. How much does it cost? And I said, it costs $25,000 a month. And he said, send me a contract. And I walked out of that meeting, took a breath, and almost pooped myself because I had none of it. I got the first check from them. I used that first check to form the LLC, to form the company, to hire people, to actually hire people and train the thing, and become the CEO and founder of my first company. That company would then do $1 million in booked revenue in 60 days. And it was this crazy catalyst, because if the reason why I always tell people about doing this is because it changed my identity, it changed my self-worth, it changed the value of my time exponentially. Because if that guy would have said $25,000 is too much, I would have said, okay, 15, 10, 5. and it ultimately would lead me to creating a piece of intellectual property using that data that ultimately was sold to another business, and then be a catalyst for me to do a bunch of big business things. The last company I was running, we raised $100 million in 2 years, spoke all over the globe, all these amazing things. And then the identity thing came back and fucking kicked me in the ass again. And I had a breakdown and realized that I had cloaked a bunch of the stuff that I had to manage the identity through. And I went deep into myself, ended up going through a divorce. Um, she became one of my best friends in my life, and really decided that I really wanted to focus on purpose. And I really wanted to focus on helping men specifically unpack and deal with those identity issues that I had suffered from for so long. And so that's now for the past 3 years or so, have now built an online men's community that specializes in a conscious movement of being aware. And I now coach men on how to be better men.
Yeah, and I love that. Now, I just released an episode yesterday with the gentleman that wrote the book, Echo and Ramadi, and he was talking about how 90% of people that go into business don't know their worth, and they undervalue their worth. So, like, and I always say it's kind of like, I'm a big sports geek, always have been. When Tony Romo went for his first contract, he went to go sit down, and they asked him, they said, what do you want? He's like, I don't know, $2 million a year. And they're like, okay, sign the paper. And he walked out, and the coaches looked at the head coach and goes, we would have gave him 5, but he only asked for 2. So that was one thing that I always thought, that we undervalue ourselves so much. And now I'm learning that if you're not afraid of your goals, they're not big enough.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, if he would have said no, you might have went down for 15, but who would have known if you would have said 30, you would have went for 30.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that's one thing you really hit upon. And the second thing is, my big thing is, the three most important words in the English language are today I decide. Because once you make a decision, then all you have to do is act upon it. And I think a lot of people are afraid to make that decision. Like when you typed in hashtag I resign, a lot of people don't have the stones to do that, but you made that decision and then you acted upon it. So I think that's amazing. That one thing you talk about is making the decisions,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And, something I'm working on a book, and the whole premise of this book is something that I really have embraced, that I think is very, very hard for a lot of, especially military veterans, but people in general, is I have multiple times in my life, the hashtag I resign is a really good example, but I have multiple examples in my life, and I'm sure you do too, where something that I thought was bad or catastrophic or terrible or crazy ultimately became exactly what I needed to learn or know then. And the book I'm writing is really about discernment and learning that there really is not anything good or bad that happens to us, because there are so many great and amazing things that happen for us, not to us, on our journeys.
Yes.
But in order for us to be pivoted in that direction, we had to be kicked in the nuts, pushed in a different direction, had the thing happen to us. When I got laid off from Morgan Stanley, my ego, I mean, like I felt like somebody was stepping on my face, because it was the most money I'd ever made in my life. Was wearing the corporate suit to work every day, had the fancy car service picking me up at home and taking me to work. Like I was living this New York businessman lifestyle. And it was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Well, like Mike Tyson says, everybody got a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
Right.
But, even like, because that brings me back to one of my mentors, Ed Milet. He always talks about, things happen for you, not to you, and everything's a teachable moment. People don't even realize that he was trying to be a professional baseball player when he was in college at Pacific, and he got injured. So all of a sudden, everything he worked for through his whole high school and college is gone. and he had to restart and reimagine his life. So talk to us, for guys that are listening. How do you restart, reimagine, and then how did the whole plant medicine thing fit in?
Yeah, no, I love this. So what I realized in my own work, and so when I started to do personal development work, I was in a position in life where I could really go deep into it. And so what I mean by that is I was on this speaking circuit, going all over the planet, speaking in London and speaking in India and Australia, the US a bunch. Um, and I had a travel schedule that I spent a lot of time in India, in Buddhist temples, and learned deep meditations and experienced plant medicine and went really, really deep in this. And recognize that that's a lot. It was a lot of work to do. Um, and what I boiled it down to is this. Here's the example I'll give you. If you think about your body, Richard's body, or anybody who's listening to, as a house, you're in your home. Now, when that home was first started to be built, right, you were born, right? Some ground was laid. That ground may have been steady. It might have been checked. It may not have been checked. And then on top of that, a foundation was built. Now that foundation was instilled into you by your family, right? Now, then there was a vision. What type of house do we want this person to turn into? That's society, culture, where you went to school, your teenage years. Then as you start to become an adult, then there is this, the house is built, the home is built. And then when you become an adult, there's the aesthetics, right? This embodiment. I want a beard, I want to be muscular, I want this kind of job, whatever it is. What I find is that when we step into this adulthood and we become a home, and all these other homes are around us, our community, at some point we're going to come home and be like, this is not the home I want to be in. And now what happens when we are not happy at home? Well, we go all these weird places. Well, I'm going to change the front yard. I'm going to paint the shingles. I'm going to try and make the home homier. And a lot of men find it very hard to go into the foundation of their home, go into the basement a little bit, and to do some work on, like, what was the thing that really is keeping the house from feeling like it's at home. And it's too easy to. That's why when men don't feel right, like, all right, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to get better looking, I'm going to make a lot of money so I feel valuable. Whatever these things you're going to do, ultimately you're not going to do the foundational groundwork until you realize there's no other answer. And so I started to do that work in my own life, recognized how it made me feel. And then I started to build this community and groups of men who are actively trying to do this work. But I realized that a lot of men to do this work, it was just hard. And that was really having done a lot of plant medicine, in many, many forms. I'm happy to talk about which forms I suggest to people. But I recognized that when I was hosting men and we were having these experiences and I was giving them the tools in order for them to implement and integrate these things into their lives, it was just hard to do. And plant medicine provides that kind of openness and that awareness to where those tools can actually be used. And
now I was in the health and fitness industry for over 33 years. I took a lot of courses. I went to a lot of schools. I went to a lot of, and they never really hit upon the cannabinoid system, and doctors really don't even know shit about the cannabinoid system. So, but I'm realizing as the more studying, because I think I've had like 8 people this month alone come on and talk about plant medicine. So, because I'm trying to soak up as much knowledge as I can. And as you guys know, if you follow me at all, I've been in recovery for over 33 years. So this interests me, but I'm always afraid to take anything, because I don't want to go back to day one over something stupid. But,
Yep.
I have some friends send me some products now that are THC free. So I'm going to start using for pain and stuff like that. So talk to us a little bit about what you recommend, what you talk to guys about, and how it's helped you out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So my plant medicine experience at this point is I just finished publishing an article where I spent uh, 365 days over 18 months microdosing in all forms in a very structured way with supervision, facilitation. But over that year, microdosed mushrooms, MDMA, ketamine, LSD, ayahuasca, Cambo, Iboga, um, San Pedro, peyote, and a couple other ones. And so over that time now, I've become very well versed now in this world. And what I've realized over time with plant medicines is, one, Nancy Reagan and the war on drugs of the 80s clearly painted a stigma around something that we just didn't understand at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first piece. The second piece of it is, when I started to do this work, I started to go back. When I started to do this work and became a coach, I really struggled with this coach word, because there's a stigma around it, right? I've got zero interest in your coaching framework or your coaching 7-figure click funnel thing.
Yeah.
And so when I needed help and support, I would go back to one of my a friend of mine who's an anthropologist. And I went back to my anthropologist friend and I said, listen, men are coming to me and they have problems with their vices, right? Pharmaceuticals, alcohol, porn, pills, drugs, women. There's these big addiction problems. But outside of the pharmaceutical piece where the pharma is taking advantage of the way our system operates, all of these things have been around for thousands of
Yeah.
years. Why are they just becoming a problem now? And my anthropologist friend kind of educated me on this idea that these things originally were all built, right? Tobacco, alcohol, plant medicines were all tools, and they all served a purpose, and they all had an intention to them. And if you were an indigenous person or part of some tribe, and you knew that on every full moon, or before you went to battle, or before you went out to hunt, or at the beginning or the end of a certain season, you were going to partake in a ceremony where you would get to use tobacco, get to use alcohol, get to use a plant medicine, get to be put into a different state with the right intentions. You just wouldn't go looking for these things because
Mm-hmm.
you knew that on the 17th, that's going to be the night that we're going to partake or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that really centered me in an interesting way. Whereas if you are even a cigarette smoker, and when do you smoke more cigarettes? When you're stressed out. What happens? You take a deeper breath in and a deeper breath out, which then satisfies your body in this crazy kind of way that we've learned that breath work does all these amazing things. But we've now tied an anxiousness to that medicine versus having to do that. And so I started to take that practice into my own life and started to experiment with all these plant medicines, and quickly realized how what I've realized with a lot of people is that when someone says, like you're going through right now, right? You say, oh, well, it's plant medicine stuff. Who do I know? Who's got a thing? Or someone goes, you got to try these CBD gummy things or whatever it is. It's going to help you with. What I've realized is that our society and our culture is addicted to two things. One, we're addicted to this idea that 2 pills are going to fix something,
Mm-hmm.
right? No matter what it is, even
Yeah.
aspirin or Tylenol, whatever it is, we're wired to be like, these 2 pills are going to do this thing for me, which is different than how plant medicine kind of operates when it's administered properly. The second part of it is that if all of these things are tools, and yet our mind is wired that when we get the interest in experimenting with this thing, we're still going to go for the thing that we have the easiest access for.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I mean by that is I experience this with lots of men. Men will come to me and say, Neil, I want to join your accountability group. I want to understand more about plant medicine. I've done mushrooms. It didn't do the thing I wanted it to do. And what I've realized over time is that if you look the way that I look at plant medicines, I look at them no different than having a wrench, a hammer, a screwdriver, a socket set, whatever, whatever, whatever. And whether that's San Pedro, ayahuasca, mushrooms, right? You can just pick your tool, but all of those tools kind of serve a certain purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a certain relationship to them. So if you are thinking about, if you have PTSD, or if you are trying to let go of some kind of trauma, or you're trying to find clarity or find purpose or find intentions or all these different things, um, if you picked up the hammer and you really needed a screwdriver in that moment, and you're wondering why you didn't get the results that you were looking for, it's just because you were using the wrong tool, because you were miseducated on it. And that's become a big piece of my work now, is to really be able to provide that experience to people who are looking to do more work with healing traumas, PTSD, drug addictions, clearing of the bodies, all that type of stuff.
And like I think, like like I said, I've been in recovery and I've been in the rooms for over 33 years. And some of the things that we're taught is, if you're going to be successful on the outside, it's an inside job. You got
Mm.
on yourself, you got to work on, forgiveness, which is a big thing, especially forgiving yourself. So now if somebody wants to work with you, how do we get in touch with you? How do we find you? And how can we support your mission?
Yeah, I love just the opportunity to be on your podcast, man. It's fantastic. I really honor and respect what you're doing. And I think it's powerful. And I mean, even from the video you posted last night, um, even though I didn't comment on it, you don't realize the impact you're having on people's lives every day. So I really appreciate what you're doing. People that want to find me, I'm all over the internet at this point. Neil Conlon. My social handles are I am Neil Conlon. And my website is neilconlon.com. And I'm pretty easy to find.
And I also want you to talk about, because I'm very great friends with Jose. So talk about your new coffee.
Yeah, man. This is exciting. You know, uh, One of the things I'm really committed to is, and you and I talked about this at the beginning of this podcast, right? Guy or gal jumps out of the military. They want to start a t-shirt company or a bourbon company or whatever it is, but they lack in the business discipline, right?
Mm.
How do I scale the operation? How do I build the spreadsheet? What's the business model? And I happen to be really good at that piece. And so when I first got introduced to Jose, somebody in the Vetrepreneur tribe introduced me to Jose and said, "You got to talk to this guy about his coffee." And Jose sent me samples of his coffee with a handwritten note,
And
um, 2 pennies, right? Three sample, like the perfect customer service thing that was just epic.
yeah.
Um, and I said, I'm in. And so we've taken my brand, which is Press4ward, and put it on his coffee. We've white labeled it. And now We sell it in a 3-pack or in an annual subscription, where people are buying for a year of coffee and getting 3 bags a month. But what I'm doing on the back end is documenting the whole entire business and the whole entire operation. Here's how we ship. Here's how we get attention. Here's the tools we use for people to buy it. Here's all the pieces. And we're almost done with this course that I'm going to be able to hand to veterans to be like, hey, if you want to build your own coffee business, here's the whole playbook. You go talk to Jose. Jose produces the coffee. Here's the playbook on how you sell it, and just go do it, so that I can teach other veterans how to create scalable and residual income sources.
So how do we get the coffee in our hands or in our mouths?
Well, how do you order it?
Yeah, how do you order it?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, it's on neilconlon.com.
Okay.
There's a coffee page. Yeah.
Okay. Is there, so what do you got coming up in the next couple months? What's on the horizon? Have you named the book yet?
Yeah. So coming up on the horizon, the name of the book is Step Back and Kneel. Again,
like it.
It's a book about discernment.
Yeah.
It's a book about things that at the time I thought were mistakes or fuck ups that actually led to something positive. And other things on the horizon, like I said, I'm at with Tony Robbins and Date with Destiny next week. The week after is my next men's retreat here in New York. That's December 10th through 12th. And then we're about to put out all of the events for next year. We're running 7 events next year. Some of them are plant medicine. And then we run our accountability groups 7 times a week. And we're growing. The goal for next year is to get 2,500 men into the Press4ward community.
I love it. So last question I have, we live in a crazy world, and we have some amazing governors here in New York and New Jersey. So obviously they're probably going to be putting us on lockdown again. So we have a lot of adults, a lot of parents that lost their jobs due to COVID, and they're driving for Uber, they're driving for DoorDash. So if I ask the average American to do something in 7 days, they're never going to get to it. But if somebody's listening to us right now and I ask them to take an actionable step in the next 24 hours, they're more likely to do that. So if somebody right now, and I'm going to ask, it's a 2-part question. If somebody right now is struggling in their business or struggling with their mental health, what is something they can do in the next 24 hours to start to get some clarity?
I love this question. So if it's in your business, it's if it's in business, you just spend that time, take some time. Here's what I tell people. If you are struggling in your business, take 2 days, 8 hours a day, and just do lead generation for yourself. Don't do anything else but lead generation. Because if you feel like your business is struggling, the sales and money coming into your business is the oxygen for your business. You could have a terrible business, but if money was coming in constantly, you wouldn't think it's so bad. You could have a great business that's not selling well, and you suddenly feel like your business is terrible. So I am a huge believer that if you feel like you're not generating enough sales for your business, you spend 2 days straight and all you do is lead generation, like actively hunting for sales, you're gonna get somewhere, guaranteed, especially with the way internet works. For your mental health, if you're really struggling, my answer for that is always you have to go back to ground. You got to get out in nature. You got to learn how to do breath work. You got to get out of your head. You got to get into your heart. People like to laugh. I have about 50 men that I text every single morning. And all I do is I text them the heart emoji, the brain emoji, and the arm emoji like this. And it's a reminder for a lot of the men that I work with to at least once a day step into your heart, step into your mind, and step into your body. And that practice is amazing for all of us, whether you have mental health issues or not. And that's how we get back to ground.
You know, and you're the first person that ever mentioned just going out and go out to nature, maybe put your feet in the sand. You're the first person ever on 360 episodes that have ever mentioned that. So I just want to say thank you. Neil, I want to say thank you, brother. People know that once you come on my show, it's a friendship, and that I'm about building generational relationships. So hopefully, you know, we can be friends for a long time after this. And I just want to say thank you. I'm truly humbled and grateful for your friendship.
Yeah, man. I love what you're doing. I fully support this podcast, and let me know how else we can work together. I'd love to do it.
All right, guys. Guys, definitely check out Neil. Make sure you get his coffee. Make sure you get his whatever he's got going on. You need to be involved in it. If you're a man, you need to join his Facebook group. You need to join his go to his website and join. Guys, remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is but up. Love you guys. See you on the flip.